We will start with transitioning to antibiotic-free production, in the US. Current and emerging challenges. Dr. Paul Ebner.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. I really want to congratulate the conveners, the organizers of this conference, this expo, bringing such a great group of people together. It's been extraordinary. And I want to thank them for allowing me to be a participant. It's really been an honor. So what I'm going to try and talk to you about today is some of the major changes that are going on in U.S. poultry production, and probably most important, how that industry has responded to those changes. So I'll start with some basic facts. Chicken is extremely important in the United States. We produce 75 billion eggs. We produce 9 billion broilers. This has changed our eating habits. 1960, beef was king. When you thought of when people wanted to purchase meat, they wanted to purchase beef. Just 60 years later, beef and pork consumption has either flatlined or gone down, while poultry consumption has skyrocketed. We now eat, as Americans, 92 pounds of chicken a year. A lot of this new growth, or this new interest in consuming chicken over other meat products, came from in the 60s and 70s, and my mother was actually an early adopter of this, and eating chicken because it had a better fat profile. So Americans were really concerned with saturated fat and heart health, and chicken offered a great alternative to these other products. So I was joking around with someone earlier today that I never ate beef growing up. I always ate chicken. And it's because my mother was an early adopter of this, of consuming chicken in place of other meats. This probably also affected my mother's decisions. This is the price point. This is the price of pork, beef, and chicken averaged over the entire carcass. So beef in the United States is almost $6 a pound. Obviously, a fillet is going to be much more than that. Ground chuck is going to be lower. But on average, chicken is roughly 1/3 the cost of beef. So starting in 2015, the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, they are in charge of regulating and approving antibiotic use in both human medicine and veterinary medicine, began a program that phased out antibiotic use in livestock production for performance purposes. So you'll hear this talked about as antibiotic growth promoters. They started to phase that practice out. So at the same time, U.S. consumers were becoming more aware of what they're becoming more interested in what they're eating, how it's produced, and they became more interested in purchasing products that came from farms or production systems that did different practices. Maybe they were organic, maybe they didn't use antibiotics, things of that nature. So one of the reasons why the poultry industry has grown so rapidly in the United States is because it's extremely responsive to consumers. When consumers want a certain product, they want a certain convenience, they've been able to respond very well. So the consumers I'm talking about are not just people like me and you. U.S. poultry has a lot of very, very big consumers. I'm sure you're familiar with several of these. But at the same time that the FDA was phasing out the use of antibiotics, or the use of antibiotics for growth promotion, all of these big chains, all of the ones that you see right here, they were also saying, we want to source chicken for our chicken McNuggets, or whatever product they have, from farms that don't use antibiotics. That was a huge pressure on poultry production. So currently, 41% of broilers produced in the United States are produced in some sort of antibiotic-free production system. Ironically, only 7% of chicken is marketed that way. And that's because you get a premium for that type of meat, and those purchasers gravitate towards chicken breasts and other select cuts. So the farms have transitioned in different ways. We have farms that are not using medically important antibiotics. Those are everything pretty much except ionophores and some synthetic antibiotics. And then we have the never given any antibiotics ever, which we can talk about it later, but poses some animal welfare issues if you're withholding certain drugs for sick animals just to maintain their marketing status. But to look at the impact that that has had, you have to look at what the antibiotics are doing in the first place. So when we're feeding those antibiotics, even in lower levels, they're improving gut health. You look at those animals, they have thinner gut lining, they absorb nutrients better. They're also preventing diseases, and a lot of these are the subclinical diseases that you never know about. So that translates to that animal being more efficient. It has increased average daily gain and a better feed conversion ratio. So when you remove those drugs, in whatever manner, the change is you're going to change the microbial profile of the chicken. So you're going to change the microbiome of the gut. And what you really see, what's really common first is these increases in coccidiosis. And with increase in coccidiosis come increases in necrotic enteritis, or Clostridium perfringens infections. So what the industry has done, and through a large amount of research in a short period of time, is really focused on trying to manipulate the gut microbiome. A lot of these pathogens that are going to cause problems, they're going to decrease efficiency, they're going to cause lesions, they're starting from the gut, so the gastrointestinal tract. So a lot of the work is limiting the exposure of the gut to different pathogens, trying to make that microbiome more commensal or more reflective of a better digesting bird. So this has not been easy. We've involved all types of strategies. One of the big ones is really, really improving nutrition. And that might sound like it doesn't have anything to do with this problem, but limiting nutrition to those nutrients that are digested and absorbed before going to the large intestine limits the amount of nutrients that are available for pathogenic organisms that live in the colon. It's also manipulating the gut microbiome, looking at exogenous enzymes to increase digestibility, and then trying to come up with these different alternatives, these other antibacterials that are non-antibiotic that could act in the same way. In the end, dealing with the withdrawal of the antibiotics is really looking at everything that impacts the gut microbiome of the chicken. So it's not just what's coming into the chicken, it's what's in the feed, it's what's on the truck. So these are huge management changes, limiting the amount of dirt or the amount of debris that's on the egg when it goes to the hatchery. It has a big difference. It shows big differences. So that brings us to some of our research. And these spaceship-looking things, these are bacteriophages. These are pictures of bacteriophages from our lab. And we've been trying to harness bacteriophages in a way that we can control a lot of these bacterial organisms. So this one is not from my lab, but it's a really cool picture. So what a bacteriophage does is it's very specific for bacteria. It finds its host, attaches to its host, injects its own DNA into the host, hijacks all the machinery of the bacteria, replicates, and in doing so, causes the bacterial cell to explode. So the picture on your left is actually a TEM, or it's probably SEM, of a bacterial cell infected by a bacteriophage and lysing at that point. So those bacteriophages then go on to infect new bacteria. So the idea of using these bacteriophages is we know that they're antibacterial, we know that they're naturally existing. Can we harness those properties to control these infections? So we've done this in several different ways over the years. We've used them in live animals to prevent infections or to prevent transmission of infections. We've used them on surfaces in food processing facilities like stainless steel. We've also used them in different food matrices, including some vegetables. We've also looked at how it impacts the animal. This is, I don't expect you to memorize this, but this is looking at what happens to the other bacteria in the gut. So this is a 16S experiment looking at what happens to if there's any wide global changes to the gut. We find that there aren't any, and there's not any innate immune response. So as wonderful as bacteriophages are, I will tell you that there's no magic pill that will replace antibiotics. Antibiotics do several things all at once. They're promoting growth, they're promoting intestinal health, and they're also extremely inexpensive. Which leads me to my last part. I wanted to take a second to introduce a new project. It's entitled Development and Commercialization of Antibiotic Alternatives for Pakistan Poultry Production. So this is a collaboration between Purdue University, University of the Punjab, and University of Animal and Veterinary and Animal Sciences right here. So you can see, you can probably identify some of your professors in the team. This is funded through the IDRC of Canada and the UK. What we're trying to do here is we know that we can't come up with probably a single compound that's going to replace that antibiotic. But we can come up with a combination of things that have these different properties that together could do the same thing. We're looking at bacteriophages, we're also looking at nutraceuticals, phytochemicals, other types of extracts. And probably as important, we're taking an economics approach to this. So we're working with ag economists, largely to see what has to happen for these technologies to be adopted. We don't want to create something that's great in the lab, kills all the bacteria in the lab, and is never used. And in my opinion, if we do that, our research will have never existed. So we're working closely with ag economists to see what we can do, what has to happen for these technologies to be adopted. So I bring this up for a couple of reasons. One is this is an example of a great collaboration. I couldn't be more pleased with my Pakistani partners. I couldn't be more pleased with UVS offering so many resources for this research to take place. But this research is taking place simply because of a conference like this. And we 2 years ago, roughly 2 years ago, it was November 2017, University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences put on the International Poultry Processing Conference. And I gave a presentation, and then I said, I'd like to talk to people about research collaborations, and people came up to me and said, hey, your idea is good, we have this idea too. And that's how it all happened organically like that. So I'd really encourage students, researchers, everyone to share those ideas, and hopefully we can continue these types of practices and these types of research projects. And if you see me walking around, feel free to come right up to me and talk to me. I'm a pretty friendly person. I like meeting students. I like meeting anyone. So just come and talk to me. I want to thank you for having me once again in Pakistan. And finally, Pakistan Zindabad.
Before time. Valentine.